guys, we're back for another wonderful episode of Round Here Buzz. Got my fellas with me, Matt Hill, Jeremy Woodard, and we got a guest today. His name is Eric Brake. He's an air traffic controller here in Birmingham, and he's going to kind of share some stories with us, and we're going to try to get a couple of laughs, and then there's going to be some really interesting stuff here that I'm excited about. So, how's it going, Eric?
Going pretty well.
Good.
Yep.
We'll go ahead and put you on the spot here in the beginning, and then Jeremy's going to ask you a few questions. But kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I grew up here in Birmingham, and when I graduated, I went to University of Alabama, got a degree in industrial management, graduated.
Roll Tide.
First of all, I need to apologize for you.
Roll
graduating
Tide.
University of Alabama. I'm the only one here, bro. Blue and orange. All right, go ahead. We'll interrupt you. I'll interrupt you 1,000 times, but go
That's
ahead.
okay. That's fine. And graduated in 2001. And had a couple of interviews set up. 9/11 happened. They canceled those interviews. I waited around. Took a job with a bank, which I did not get a degree in, but I learned quite a bit. But after about a year in that, I decided, well, let me try something different. I'm still waiting on industrial management. And so I looked at Middle Tennessee State because they had an aviation aerospace program, and decided to go there for air traffic, and started there. My second week of my first semester there, I had a call for a job at the Mercedes plant, but I'd just taken out that's what I got a degree in originally, and I'd just taken out a student loan and a year lease on an apartment. And so I was like, well, the first 2 weeks I loved it. And so I stuck with that one semester, and I'm like, I think I'm going to do this. And so I graduated from Middle Tennessee State in air traffic. Well, there's two ways traditionally to become an air traffic controller. It's either go through the military or the CTI, College Training Initiative Program at a university or college. And the CTI program is not really a college program. It's offered through by the FAA at a college. Right. So I had to get a degree in something else. So I got a degree in aircraft dispatching, and I was a dispatcher for about a year after I graduated while waiting on the FAA to call me up. And then I started March of 2007. So this is March of 2024. So it's been 17 years.
Nice.
I've been doing air traffic, and I started in Atlanta.
Wow.
There's two parts. There's two parts of air traffic. There's terminal and there's en route. And I started in the en route sector. Not many people know about the en route. When they think of air traffic, they'll think of a tower, maybe a little bit of radar, terminal radar. So the terminal consists of the tower and then the terminal radar control. The terminal radar control is like departure control. Like for Birmingham, we own from the surface to 10,000 feet, from about Gunnersville, Albertville area, down east of Gadsden, east of Anniston, southeast of Sylacauga, west to like southwest of Tuscaloosa, like around Aliceville, up past Smith Lake and over. All of that surface to 10,000 feet is Birmingham's radar control.
Interesting.
Then they have the tower at the airport. And then there's 11 satellite airports within our airspace. Of course, there's Birmingham, the main airport, that has a class Charlie. I'll get into that if you want me to later on. But there's the main airport and the 11 more satellite airports. Tuscaloosa is the only other one with a tower. It's a class Delta. And we service all of those airports and then anything serviced at 10,000 feet. The tower at Birmingham has clearance delivery, ground control, and then they call it the local control. That's the one that says cleared for takeoff, cleared to land, and then their airspace is surface about 4,000 feet, 5 miles radius. So anything like in the tower pattern, that's the local controller. So that's the terminal. En route is outside of that. So like high altitude, and they're large airspaces. About 21 in the country. And
So the higher you go, I guess over 10,000, that would be federal. I guess is that how that would work?
well, it's all federal. Some towers are contract towers, so they're not FAA. It's the contract company that runs those, but they work in conjunction with the FAA.
Interesting. Okay.
So let's take an example of departing from Birmingham to, let's say, Orlando. So if you want to depart from Birmingham, you'll first get a clearance. You call clearance delivery. You're just sitting in the airplane doing nothing. Engines might not even be running. And they'll clear you. They'll say cleared from Birmingham to Orlando, and they'll tell you how to get there, the route, and the altitude to fly. But, I mean, the pilot files what they want to do, and if it's good, they can have it. If not, they'll be like, well, you can't go this way. You got to go that way. And so they'll give them the clearance. And then they'll say, like, the departure frequency, they'll give them that, and a squawk code. A squawk code goes in their transponder so that when they tag up on the radar scope, it has all the identifying factors for that aircraft, such as the call sign. It'll say like Delta 123 or November 12345, the tail number. And that's what clearance delivery does. Then when you get ready to go, you call ground control, who owns the taxiways. And they'll say, taxi, we'll say runway 6, taxi via, or let's go runway 24, taxi via November Golf Alpha. And that's how you get to runway 24. But you can't get on the runway until the local controller tells you you can go. So there's 3 positions in the tower: clearance, ground, and local controller would be like runway 24, clear for takeoff. Then you take off. When you get airborne, they will say contact departure. That's where the radar comes in, the terminal radar. They'll say radar contact, and they'll climb you to, they can only climb you to 10,000 feet. If you want to go 35,000 feet, they can only climb you to 10 because that's the top of Birmingham's airspace. So then they'll turn you on course, or they give you a headings, or however they want you to go. Climb you to 10, start a handoff to the en route center of Atlanta.
Okay.
That's where I used to work. And then when they take the handoff, they'll switch you to Atlanta, and then Atlanta will climb you all the way up to 35,000 feet, hand you off to other controllers. They'll hand you off to the next en route center, which would be Jacksonville Center. And Orlando, I'm not sure if it's in Jacksonville or Miami Center, but let's just say it's Miami Center. They'll hand you off to Miami Center. Miami Center will start to descending you. Then it's kind of reverse order. They'll descend you to the top of Orlando's approach control, start the handoff. Orlando will take the approach control, will take the handoff. They'll descend you in, line you up with the runway, clear you for the approach. So like cleared for the visual approach to this runway, and then they'll switch you to the tower. Then that local controller will say clear to land. It's backwards now. He'll land. He'll tell you where to turn off. Then he'll switch you to the ground controller, and they'll taxi you to the gate. That makes sense?
Yeah, and I can see why everybody wants to go super technical with all this, because in 20 years, the people that are going to be doing this are going to be, they're not going to be able to do all the communication, all this stuff. Man, these young cats, they're not going to be able to handle all that stuff.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to have their phone in one hand and this, that, and the other hand, and talk to 18 different people. I mean, we're screwed. Let's go robotical, dude.
And the en route sectors, they own up to 60,000 feet. They call them flight levels above 18,000 feet above. They call them flight levels. Flight level 600. That's where uncontrolled airspace starts for, whoever. Military can fly up there and not even talk to anybody.
Right.
So
interesting.
So before we get too far ahead, what is radar? I'm just kidding. That's just a joke.
He's a guy that's on the MASH show.
I was going to say
that's right.
The 1077th.
Yep. 4077.
The guy that was like this.
Yeah. It's
now I will break
4077.
radar down. I will break radar down into like what I said, like a transponder code that gives you identifying information for an aircraft. There's primary targets, and then there's the secondary targets with the transponders. So if there's something flying around out there and there's no transponder, it could be a flock of geese. It could be a thunderstorm with a lot of hail in it that the radar's reflecting off of. You'll see primary targets. But if you have an airplane and you turn your transponder on, then you have a squawk code, and it can relay to the radar scope who you are.
That makes sense.
So
Well,
That makes sense.
That,
since you said that, that kind of brings me to something
I
different.
always get worried right
Diff,
here.
yeah,
I'm a little nervous.
different reflections from radar will tell you different things. What if it's? I mean, just put it out there. What if it's a UFO? Well, I mean, how is that? How is that tracked? What is it? Is it out there? Is it not out there? Do you see it? Do you not see it? I mean,
What do you even know what UFO stands for?
uh,
me
I,
or Jeremy?
uh,
I can see
well,
where if it doesn't have a transponder, that would probably be the number one. Okay, now you got to worry if it's an animal or a flock of seagulls and this, that, and the other. But I could see where I haven't studied this, but I've been watching that a lot because man, when Jeremy said what we're going to get into later, I mean, I got like excited. I was like, okay, we're gonna have this dude on Eric Brake. He's an air traffic controller, cool, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, oh yeah, but he's got this audio file, and I'm like, what? So
mhm.
I'm excited about that stuff. So go ahead, Jeremy. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just curious as to how you determine, you know, just because it doesn't have a transponder.
Unidentified.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't have a transponder, how do you determine what exactly it is? I
Is
mean,
this a
what's the
problem or
best
not?
way?
You don't really know. I can think back several times. One time in particular, I was working radar. I was the only one in the radar room, and there was a primary target moving across the scope, but it was going slow. We only showed ground speed, so it was doing 30 knots of ground speed, which is slow. I mean, airplanes don't really go that slow. And it would go about 10, 15 miles and then it just disappear. 10 seconds later, it popped. That was about, I'd say, over by the Warrior River, about 20 miles west of Birmingham.
Oh Lord, ain't no
10
telling what
seconds.
it do.
10 seconds later, it popped up about 20 miles north of Birmingham and started tracking south and southeast. It got about 7 miles north of the airport, still coming towards Birmingham, and there's Class Charlie airspace, what I mentioned earlier, which goes out to 10 miles from the airport. I called the controller in the tower and said, hey, do you see? It was nighttime. So if it's nighttime, it's easy to see airplanes with lights
Sure.
and see them very, very far. I said, do you see anything out there? Because, I pointed something out on the scope, and they said, I see it on the scope, but I don't see anything out there. And so I was like, okay, maybe it's just a, anomaly in the radar or something. Then it disappeared, and I saw it pop up again over by Gadsden. It's like, how would it be going 30 knots, drop off the scope, 10 seconds later, it
That's
popped
where
up
it
30
should be.
miles away. And it started going down towards Pell City, dropped off the scope, popped up now Shelby County. Started going northwest, and I tracked it all the way to Smith Lake. It dropped off, and it popped up near Hamilton, which is pretty much as far as we can see. And that's the last I saw. That's the first instance. But then
Mm.
lately,
So just
yeah,
real quick. After that's done, do you write it up or do you go, wow, that was crazy and just move on? Or I mean, how is that handled?
It
well,
feels like incident command would be involved somewhere.
Sure, sure.
normally we just like if it doesn't feel like anything dangerous or anything other, whatever,
Right.
we just kind of ignore it. But if we can actually see that it's something out there, or an aircraft actually spots something, then we will, say, put it in what we call an MOR, which is like how you file a log and incidents, and it doesn't have to be anything major, but could be.
I
So
mean,
the
30 mile
federal
stop and goes in seconds. That's to me a 30-mile stop and go boom 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 boom. That's a what's up with that? That's a
Yeah.
concern.
Most of the time when things that happen like that, I think we just brush it off as radar screwing up or something. But it's been happening more and more lately. Where now
Do you do, do you know the guy that was on the East Coast? I think he was in the Air Force, and everywhere you go, I think one place was Martha's Vineyard, and all the way down. He ended up in Miami, and they had the same thing. That there was this one. You got to look it up on YouTube. I should have pulled it up, but I didn't have time. But there is one rotating unidentified flying object that they got so normal for them to see. Like they say that there's a pattern for the flights to come out of the airbase, and then there's like a tunnel where they go through, and then they have to get through that tunnel before they break and go wherever they're going. You know what I mean? And they said that it got so normal to see that unidentified flying object that they just begin to use it as a landmark. I don't know if have you guys ever watched that guy? He was on Joe Rogan like 3 or 4 months ago.
I don't know if it's the same guy, but I did watch a video of an F-18 pilot, Mark Holsey, I think was his name.
Yeah,
It's the same guy, but
that
he,
sounds really familiar. That sounds and it was just like, and dude, I mean, he's got like, of course, it's not like portrait photos, but it's like the radar, and you can see it. I mean, you can see it rotating.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's something to look at. I think that might be his name, Mark. I think that's right on time, to be honest with you. But man, that one was crazy.
yeah. The one that I watched a video from Mark Holsey was about they would be over the warning areas on the Gulf Coast doing some runs, and then they get like a
Yeah, he was at
suspicious
Pensacola.
target, and they would, you know, hone in on it and try to take off, and they would think they're catching up to it, and all of a sudden it just shoots off so fast, like
Sure.
where to go. And he can't explain it, and so they don't know what to do.
As an air traffic controller for more than, I don't know, many years, where do you stand on extraterrestrial?
Well, for about the last year and a half or so, maybe more, a couple of years, on the midnight shift, we've seen lights that we can't identify. You think they're aircraft, and whenever you look over the horizon and it's at night and maybe it just looks a little bit above the treetops, you can't tell how far away it is. If it's close,
Right.
it might only be 3,000 feet in the air. But if it's 100 miles away, it could be 60,000 feet or higher. You know, you don't really know, like a star.
Right.
But they're moving, and it's happened so much. We've actually filed it in our log about what this is because we've had pilots to even see it, and they're confused. And UAB's medevac once reported it about a year ago.
Nice.
And so we're like, what does the altitude look like on it? And they said probably about 10 or 20,000 feet higher than we are, and they were about 10,000 feet. So we're like, hey, maybe it's 20,000 feet in the air. I don't know. And then other airplanes were like, yeah, we see it too. And what we're seeing is it looks like an airplane, a light in the sky going like counterclockwise circles. But it's not in a holding pattern, but it's circling. And the weird thing is, if it's that high up, the amount of distance it's covering would be basically supersonic.
Right.
But there's no sound, anyone breaking the sound barrier. There's nothing like that, and there's nothing on the radar scope. One of our controllers was watching this and called Memphis Center. Remember the en route center, who has centers have huge airspaces.
No, we're talking about naked eye visuals, right?
Yes, we're seeing this, and we've actually had people to like record it to like, hey, go take some video of this. And so, because no one's going to believe us. Well, one controller calls Memphis Center and says, hey, do you have any aircraft? Maybe it's around Huntsville or somewhere, north of Birmingham, maybe 100 miles or so. And they said no. And then the controller goes, are you talking about some lights?
Oh, no.
Yeah. And he says, yes. He goes, I keep having airplanes report this. Like, we can't figure out what this is, and there's nothing on the radar scope. This has happened so often over the last year and a half. Like, we have no explanation for it. We don't know what it is.
Well, it always happens with like these air bases and these. Well, NASA's in Huntsville. The Redstone Arsenal is a wicked place for things that have been built in the past. So I mean, that's 100 miles ahead. I mean, that's about where you're looking at. I mean, I assume, right? Up north to North
Yeah,
North
but we don't really know if it's 100 miles. We just know it's
right.
that direction. But it's a light. It's like a star. I mean, a star over the horizon.
That's crazy.
And some people, if you go to Reddit and read some stuff about this, some people are like, oh, that's just Starlink. It is not Starlink at all. I mean, I know what Starlink looks like.
Yeah.
It doesn't even act like Starlink. Starlink goes in one direction. These things are circling. They're moving out, coming in. It's like
yeah.
At what part do you have to, or I guess not have to, but what part would you escalate that to say the military? I mean, how how out of the ordinary does it have to be before you would notify the military to maybe take a look at it?
Well, all we can do is just file the
Federal
report
report,
in
right?
our log, and where it goes from there is out of the air traffic controller's hands. If it causes some sort of a significant event with a loss of separation, that's different, but that's not happening. So
Hmm.
um, we just report what the pilots see, and what we
Yeah,
see, and where it goes from there. I mean, nothing's happened as far as I know.
right.
So I wonder: is it military? Is it a UAP? UAP is what they call UFOs now.
Oh, really?
Unidentified aerial phenomenon.
I
So
guess the
Ah,
UFO guys were getting offended or something. So,
yeah.
Had to
What
change it up a little.
yeah,
right.
what type of I mean, the equipment, I've always heard the equipment in, the airspace, the towers and all the things that are being used by the air industry is like outdated, very outdated. Is that part of the problem with reasons why you can't see these types of things, or is that really true?
well, the radar should pick it up regardless.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense.
in fact, we have ground based radar, and now we also have something called ADSB, which is automatic dependent automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, I believe. Which what that is they're satellites in the sky, like GPS satellites that help. They work in conjunction with the ground based radar to be able to see aircraft and places that you wouldn't be able to see them before. Maybe like if you have if this is a mountain ridge and the radar's over here, it can only go this way. It can't see on the other side.
Right.
ADSB can actually help out with that. So we're able to see more with today than we could see 10 years ago.
Mm.
Hmm.
So I don't know.
The screen that you look at. So I think of air traffic controller immediately, like all these old like airport movies, the comedies, and all come to your mind. So lots of stuff there. Right, but the screen the screen that you guys view things on, does it look kind of like what they would show you on a movie or something, or like if you know what I'm saying? Because
It's
everybody thinks like, oh, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
it has evolved over time. They used to have the sweeps. There may be a few facilities left that have those
Hmm.
old green sweeps.
Yeah,
Now they're black screens, rectangular or square, and yeah, I think the newer movies that shows you is similar. I think one of the Pushing Ten's an older movie. I don't remember what if you remember that movie. It was an air traffic
yeah.
movie. I
Is
don't
it so?
remember
Is
the
it like
radar scope that was on that one. I don't remember what it looked like, but
does it show you like a little airplane, or is it like a little
no, it will.
arrow?
But
Terminal and en route are different. It's been a while since I was at Atlanta Center, but they had like little diamonds,
Got
which
it.
showed you where the target was, and Birmingham has like a little splat, and then you have like overlaid on top of that. We'll have like a letter of in the terminal world of the sector that has the handoff on it. So that's really what you're looking at, like a little blue dot with a splat and a little letter on top of it. So you don't
So
really
so when you're
see.
watching that thing, if you like how do you become aware that like hey we like incoming, like not maybe not like that, but like you're just rolling there watching the screen, it's like oh there's one, or is there like a printout you get or a phone call in the ear, it's like hey boys you got somebody coming up, or do you really generally know who's coming, or is it more or less you just watch the radar and see what pops up? I mean that can't be it.
Well, if it's an airplane and they're actually talking to, if they have a transponder, they're either there's two ways you can fly: VFR, which is visual flight rules, and IFR, which is instrument flight rules. IFR is what all the airlines fly. It's what most of the corporate jets fly. Anybody can fly IFR as long as you're instrument rated. And what that is you get a clearance and you're talking to air traffic control the whole time. It's like the safest way to go, I guess. VFR, the visual flight rules, is if you have your own little airplane and you just want to fly around out there, you don't have to talk to anybody, but you got to follow some rules. You can't fly through the clouds. You got to avoid the Delta airspace, the Charlie and the Bravo airspaces. Class A airspace is flight level 180 or 18,000 feet and higher. You can't go up there either. So if you have an aircraft and it has a transponder and you don't want to talk to air traffic, you want to fly a VFR, you squawk 1200. So every aircraft squawking 1200 means they're out there, they're not talking to anyone. That might be talking to their satellite airport frequency, but they're not talking to air traffic.
Got it.
And
Yeah,
if you have a transponder, you're going to want to turn that on just so that an air traffic controller can tell other aircraft, hey, you have an aircraft, VFR, 10 o'clock, 3 miles, opposite direction, whatever.
I think it's crazy that, everybody says, flying is safer than driving a car, and I believe it 100%. And what's so crazy is, even without the entire system of air traffic control, there are millions and millions of frequencies all over, coming from everywhere, coming from our bodies, coming from electrical, everything. And then you stack that on top, and you have frequency identifiers from each airplane and each this and that, and each, is this instrument dying? You have all this stuff going, and the amount of accidents that there are so minimal. I have to put my hats off to everybody in that industry. It's crazy how there's not more. I know there's a lot of things that are left, oh, wow. Glad we got him landed real quick, and you don't hear about those. I've been on a few of those, but I just think it's crazy amazing how, man, it's just so minimal of deaths and injuries and accidents that you have compared to everything involved in it. It's insane,
Yeah, but we have separation rules. Terminal is you got to if aircraft are less than 1,000 feet in altitude, you got to keep them at least 3 miles apart. If they're if they're less than 3 miles apart, you can miss by 1,000 feet, like that. And so 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, 11,000, you can pass each other. But if they're same altitude, you got to keep them 3. En route, 5 miles laterally. But now they're with ADS-B and things, they're getting to where they can use 3 in a lot of places.
That's where you get the, hey, Mav, we're in this jet wash, man.
Yeah, so like let's say you're having to use 5 miles, let's say 3 miles, and they pass each other, and it's 2.9 where you're in trouble.
Really?
So, yeah,
as far as regulation-wise, you're in trouble.
Well, yeah, they call that a deal in the air traffic world, and so you don't want to have a deal because then we're like, depending on how many deals you have, you might have to retrain or.
Wow, I got you.
Hey, Eric, on that, so like you got stuff going in all directions, right? You've got all of the dimensions. I don't know how many dimensions there are, 2, 3, 4, something, but you got up, down, left, right, sideways, all this stuff, all these people everywhere, and you got to manage that somehow or another. I'm guessing. What do you think is like a really important attribute? Like if someone gets signed up for this deal, they just can't do it. They just can't manage it. So like how much of this is automated? How much of this is your straight up skill and like spatial awareness? You can paint a visual, where things are. Like how much that relies on you and how much of that is like, the computer's telling you what to do?
Well, a lot of it is you.
I would imagine.
You have to be able to. They compared. Back in the day was when I was in Atlanta Center. They had something called NAT Pro, which is something little program they had, and the reason they had that was because they did a study and compared the closest thing to air traffic control was a NASCAR driver, because they said with a NASCAR driver, everything's moving fast. You got to know what's in front of you, behind you, to the left, right. Talk to your crew chief. Know about your car. All these things are happening. You got to make quick decisions, and so that's why. When I turn 56, I'm forced to retire.
Yeah.
You can't work past 56. And the reason is because, your mental your mental state
Yeah.
starts declining, and that's why you don't see 65-year-old NASCAR drivers,
Yeah.
because it's just a young person's job. So you have to be able to do all of that, and
Is there a number of how many you're responsible for at one time?
well, however many comes in your
Plane?
estimate.
It really? It's
But
just
I mean, it can get to a point to where you have to say, "Hey, I can't take no more." Like, but you're kind of screwing over that controller if you do that, and they'll have to
right.
circle and hold, and now their airplanes are piling up. So you
Right.
don't want to do that if you don't have to. But they'll start also breaking off, splitting off sectors. You might be working on the midnight shift. Every sector combined, we have like 6 sectors in our radar room. Really, we have about 5, but one of them is always combined with another one. So the count of that would be 6. So if you're working everything, it starts getting busy. You maybe split it off. I'll work 2 and you work 2. And then it gets even busier. I'll work 1, you work 1, and this other person works 2.
Yeah.
So that's what you try to do before you start saying, I can't take anymore. You just
So
want to start.
I'm rolling through Burger King last night, right? And I got a Whopper.
Man, you got scorpions on?
Should have missed opportunity right there.
Missed it, bro.
Yes, totally. Golly. So, and I don't eat Burger King very often at all, but I had to go to Helena, get some paint, rolling through Burger King, rocking it. I'm like, I hadn't had a Whopper in ages. So I got the Whopper, the onions, all that stuff. This is actually good. I was thinking of Burger King in a while. But I'm rolling up to the drive-thru. Actually, I'm sitting at the drive. I'm sitting, we're getting ready to order, and this guy just walks out. Employee walks out. He's got his Burger King T-shirt on, and I can hear him mouthing some really unsavory language. He's pissed, man. And I roll up there, and I get my stuff, and this girl's frantic. She's like, "I'm the only person here." I'm like, "Well, you're doing great. You're killing it." So just helping her out a little bit. What I'm getting to is this: you can get by with one person at Burger King, right? And you got my burger might be cold or whatever.
Sure.
But for you guys, it seems like I go to the post office, it's like there's never anybody there. You go to the DMV, holy crap. But for you guys, I'm like, this is not a spot you can like overload a guy.
Yeah.
Is that common? Is it an issue for you guys? Is it like I'm not asking you to get into budget or anything, but is it a deal where you're like, holy crap, we could use another guy now or a girl or whatever, or is it like, hey man, we are always
Keep
covered
you full. Yeah.
because it's people's lives, right?
Yeah. And the big issue today is staffing, and staffing around the country is the lowest. When I got hired in 2007, they're complaining about staffing.
Wow.
And it's worse now than it was then. They haven't done anything about it. So staffing is bad. And I was working this past week, and I was getting busy, and I was like, hey, I need some help. And I was told, we don't have anybody.
Oh man.
It's like, I'll get somebody here as soon as I can, but right now there's nobody to help right now. But of course person I was talking to tried to help me as much as they could.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like you're opening up sectors and, splitting off other sectors. But
So you're go ahead.
No, that's it.
I was going to say, so you're sitting at work, right? And you
Yeah.
had like some really bad Chinese at lunch, and you're like, I got to get out of here for half an hour. I mean, that can't happen.
Well, if you got to go, you'll like, hey, you try to find somebody like, hey, I need to get out. I need to go right now to the restroom, whatever. And so they'll try to get somebody in there until you get out.
I got a sick
You get
kid.
back.
I got something.
Yikes.
I mean,
man, that's crazy, man, to think about.
There's always someone on break. There has to be
Got
someone.
it.
We're not allowed to work more than 2 hours without a break, right?
Got it. Okay.
And
Okay.
really, if you're there an hour and a half, your brain is already starting to fry. And so, you don't want to sit there much longer than that without a break. If you
Yeah, I
sit
would
there for
imagine
2
you're
hours,
really engaged.
yeah, but it's just think about staring at something and just for 2 hours and you're trying to just fix something like the game Operation. You can't make it. Remember that game Operation?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like you had to play that. If you had to play that for 2 hours and you can't stop playing it, I mean, the first 5 minutes might be fun, but after so long, you just, that's just
Yeah,
what it is.
And I think you probably actually get worse at it. You need a break.
You also got to put in here
That's why
too.
we're required to break.
Think of it as a legit body, because I mean, you fan
Totally.
off one of these planes, you got 80, 90 people. I mean, if you're playing Operation with a legit body, how stressful that would be for 2 hours.
Right.
That's crazy. we don't have a Googler yet. Hopefully, we'll get big enough to have somebody where I can go, I wonder how many. But
The
does
crew, yeah.
anybody know how many planes are in the air in the U.S. airspace average on just any time?
This guy knows.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, the command center in Washington knows
Yeah.
all the numbers.
Yeah.
I think the average is like 8,000 planes in the U.S. maybe, and that might just be IFR. You know,
Right.
That's not. They're not
Yeah.
counting the VFRs. But
That's a number. I thought it would be more than that, but that's a big
that's
number if you
probably
think about it.
the average. I'm
Yeah.
sure it is more at times, less at
I
times.
was just trying to think when they just shut down airspace after 9/11,
That's
how
exactly what I was thinking.
were you really? Were you?
Yeah, that's
How
exactly.
insane that was. How
Yeah.
insane that was.
At the time, I lived just outside of Norfolk, Virginia, where there's a ton of traffic between DC and all that, and it was like
No
dead ass
doubt.
quiet. And
Yeah.
it's really odd that 9/11 kind of derailed some stuff for you, and yet you're now in, not exactly the same way, but that was affected
Yeah,
on that day. Crazy.
Yeah.
yeah, it is, and
It
I don't
affected
know.
my business for sure. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a rough one.
The last few weeks or few months, it seems like there's been more of possible collisions or actual collisions on intersecting runways with people crossing and they're not supposed to, and they're going down the wrong runway, and they're clipping a jet, or a jet's having to pull back up at the last minute because there's somebody else on his runway. Well, what's the cause of that?
It could be a number of things. It could be the pilot. It could be.
Cocaine.
Preach on, brother.
I mean, it could be a pilot landing on the wrong runway. A lot of times they'll line up with the taxiway. You know, like they think they're going to land. That's happened. You know, I saw that on the news a few years ago. I think it was Air Canada. I'm not really sure. I can't remember, and I can't remember the airport either. I should know this. Somewhere in California, I believe. Well, anyway, they were lined up instead of with the runway. They were over here about to land on the taxiway, and there were like 3 or 4 or 5 airplanes about to go. And the controller saw it and said, "Go around, go around." You know, I think the pilot might even said something too.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
it could be that. It could be, someone maybe not paying attention and they accidentally tell them the wrong route or cross or whatever. So
Is
I
that
don't know
for
anything
lack
specific.
of is it lack of training on the pilot side that might cause that, or because you see a lot of like United, they're more on this DEI type stuff now, where they don't have to have the best; they've got to have a quota of certain things, for people to fly with their company now.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how the airlines train or what they do. So I can't really speak on what they do to train. I mean, I wish I knew more about that, but
No, but I know that you've talked to some pilots, and you're like, this might be the dumbest person I've ever talked to in my life.
that
And
is
he's talking
true.
to us.
Well,
But
that's what I was thinking. Like I was going to reel that question in a little bit as far as like,
In a professional manner.
yeah, are there asshole pilots out there? Are there
oh yeah,
dumb
definitely.
pilots out
But
there?
the
Are
same
there?
thing for controllers too. But when it comes to pilots, and if any like student pilots see this podcast, we talk to every single pilot like they're a professional pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, not every pilot is. A lot of them are. They've you know, there's different levels of ratings. You can get your private if you want to learn how to fly. You get your private first, and your instrument, and you can get your multi-engine commercial and all that. Well, you might be flying with only a private. You might not even have a private yet. You might just be a solo student pilot. But we treat you like you're a professional pilot unless we know. So if a student pilot sees this and they're like, if you start talking to air traffic control, let them know, hey, I'm a solo student pilot, and I will slow down my rate of speech. I'll be more clear. I will make sure that I'm easier on you. I'm not expecting the best out of you. So.
Right. That makes sense.
Hey, what do you do to? You're gonna like this one. What do you do to keep your ego in check since you have so much power? Because I'm thinking like there's pilots think. I mean, okay, so what do I know? I don't know anything. I fly, a couple times a year maybe. I'm thinking pilots think they're God's gift to the earth, and yet you get to kind of tell them what to do. I think that'd be like, hey man, I'm the freaking guy here. Is that?
I'll
Well,
tell you.
Is there
I'll tell
is
you
there
how.
anything cool about that,
I'll
or is it
tell you
just a
how
good
he
barbecue
handles it.
story? Yeah.
The way he handles it is he hangs out with guys like me and Pritchett and Tree, and we
Totally
humble
makes
him
sense.
really quickly.
yeah,
We all got to stay grounded.
yep, yeah. I mean, there's pilots that can be easy to work with, and there's pilots that can
Sure.
just whatever. And there's a lot of people, a lot of controllers that are the same way. That a lot of controllers are hard to deal with, demanding, whatever. It kind of works on both sides.
So here's
So
another one for you.
no tower flyby tricks that you can do to a
See,
pilot.
I was gonna
My
say, do
bad.
you get to say negative Ghost Rider ever?
I've never said
What's
it.
your
Hey,
what?
right here, baby. Right
Yeah,
here.
what's your
Right here.
vector, Victor? So
What's your
yeah, I know.
What is it? It's
clearance?
fun.
Clearance.
Large ball.
Stop
Yeah,
calling me Shirley.
we're starting up. We're starting up something between pilots and controllers at Birmingham, which other facilities have already have this. It's kind of like I don't want to say a meet and greet, kind of like a coffee talk or something, but
Yeah,
like once every month or so, we'll get together and meet somewhere. We haven't done this yet, but we're getting it together so that
yeah,
the pilots can get to know the controllers' faces and vice versa, especially flight schools, because it can be intimidating for someone that's never taught air traffic and you're flying, you're having to do it for the first time.
yeah.
Um, and so one story I can tell about a solo student pilot was he came into Birmingham, was doing touch and goes in the pattern, and he wasn't doing anything right. And I was up there as well as another controller. And when he landed, when a pilot does something wrong, like a deviation, we can give them what they call a brasher warning. Well, it's possible pilot deviation. Call this number, and we'll discuss and maybe file something or just talk about it or whatever. Figure out what happened. Listen to the tapes and watch the recorded audio, the radar playback, and all that. But this pilot, he landed, and we told him to call the tower. He said, "Look, you didn't, you weren't doing anything. We're just asking. We're having to send people around because of you." So gave him the phone number, and he called the tower. But that was really for two reasons. We knew he was a student. We didn't want to lecture him and berate him over the frequency because that would tie up the frequency. Plus, it might embarrass him. Then when he called us, we told him maybe you can come visit us in the tower, sometime. So he came over, and when he got to meet us and saw we'd tell him what he was doing, I think that next time we talked to him, he had a much more confident. He got to see the operation. He got to see us and realize that I don't know.
Just regular people, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's great. That's like a air traffic controller trust fall. We got you, dude. Come on in.
yeah,
I think it's important in any business, but especially something like that, man. I mean, if you
Agreed.
can just,
Absolutely.
if I'm a pilot and I'm rolling in Atlanta and I ain't been there in a while, and you go, "Hey, this is break," and I go, "What's up, man?" I mean, obviously you're not having that conversation, but in your mind, you're like, "Yeah, I remember that guy.
yeah.
He's a guy
Well,
that went in there with April, and we can't talk about that, this, that, and the other." So,
yeah. I mean, I know several pilots, and then a lot of them know me, and we'll say hello.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's get into this.
62, go ahead. Yeah, is there any active military airspace just like north of Winnipeg? No, nothing I'm aware of. You said north of Winnipeg? Yeah. No, not right now. Okay. Lots of active bright light information. They look like they're at like 500 or something, just trying to figure it out. Okay. Yeah. No, I haven't heard anything. I'll check in with the next sector. And you said around 50,000 feet, roughly. Is that correct? Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, it's hard to say, but yeah, it keeps being like 3 to 4 really bright lights, and they kind of were in like a triangle formation, and then it looks like they'll differ for a bit, and then they disappear, and then they come back. Okay. Okay. Thanks for that. I'll just take a note, but yeah, I can't think of what that might be. Okay. Yeah, check in These lights, 12 o'clock. See something, flashing lights, it's running 11:30, 3600. Yeah, falling in triangle, then flying away and coming back. Big bright light that's coming, towards us, slightly above us, 3600. More than 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, sir. Thanks, Marquette 7086. Do you have any traffic out there? No, I had one other report, 10 minutes ago from a Morningstar flight, east of Regina, reported the same thing. Her best guess was around, somewhere around flight level 500, and, thought it might be somewhere north of Winnipeg. So yeah, do you have a guess as to what you might think the element is? Hard to tell, because the evening, I'd say she's probably pretty accurate, but they keep forming up in a triangle, and then it's pretty odd. There's 600 something this morning, and are you still seeing those lights that you were reporting earlier? Yeah, it's a little bizarre. There's around 6 of them just randomly doing the formation flight at high altitude at 12 o'clock, for 600. Okay, thanks. Winnipeg Center for Flare 600. Go ahead. Just curious, when it comes to those lights that you have multiple aircraft reporting, what reports do you guys have to file for that? Usually we just tell the shift manager and then they follow up with whatever reporting they do. Okay. So you're not reporting a UFO then? Report exactly what the pilot said to the shift manager and then they'll file it as they do. Okay, thanks. Definitely not satellites. UPS 104, I just got here for the morning, so I'm just finding out about all the reports, but I guess they've been all the way across the prairies this morning or overnight. Okay, yeah, it's like, unlike anything I've ever seen in like the 15 years of night flying that I've done. Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
No, good.
So basically,
So kinda-
go ahead.
Yeah, well, just walk us through what they were seeing and saying and what it means.
They saw, like I said, we've been seeing them from Birmingham, looking to the
So
north.
basically, the same thing up there. They're seeing the same thing.
We're looking to the north and kind of to the northeast and all that. These people were near Winnipeg, which is in the southern part of Canada near the border of the United States. And they were seeing 3 lights that would kind of be out, form a triangle, and they would move in. And you can find that on Reddit.
Yeah.
Maybe, I'm not sure. There was actually, that was in the news, I believe. I don't know where I read it, but it was like a news article about the reports. And they mentioned that happened, I think, January the 29th of this year. There's so many reports of that, but they were just seeing these lights, and it's like you're flying toward them. It's not stars, and it's not Starlink, and it's not satellites. There's nothing like that.
I mean, it's a. I would be shocked if there's not, extraterrestrial life out there. I mean, I would be shocked if there's not. I used to believe this whole thing about, well, if that's the case, there's not a God, but there's really nothing that you could stand on with that. I mean,
Yeah.
The heavens and the earth were created. Dude just forgot to tell us he's throwing some other people a couple million miles away. So.
Yeah.
What's up? Y'all figure it out.
Yeah, right. No, it gets really interesting, man. It gets really interesting when you get into, and I'm not a ancient alien type dude, but if y'all ever watch that show, it gets really interesting with some of the things that they do with the movement of the stones and the frequencies and the way that everything's intertwined with the solstice. And I'm not a scholar of it, but dude, it's crazy. I mean, why not? So.
That was
It does concern me
very
that
Blair
there's lights
Witchy
all
there.
over the place.
Yeah.
Maybe they're setting up to some strategic warfare, but
It's a freaking spy balloon.
wasn't that a joke?
So,
Also a real thing. I mean,
So what's the scariest thing you've seen at the Birmingham airport? I mean, what the scariest moment for you?
that
Not
wasn't a
outside.
coworker or Tommy Tuberville.
Not while
Uh,
walking into the building.
I mean, I saw the UPS crash after it happened, but I didn't watch that happen.
Really?
I was wondering.
Yeah, I came to work that morning and it was, it was still smoldering on the hillside there, short of the runway, and it sat there for 2 weeks while the NTSB did their investigations. Time I came to work, you had to see it. And the co-pilot, I worked with her in Nashville, Shanda Fanning, at a company called Fractionaire. And I've had several instances of emergencies. One of them I can think of this was a Vision jet, which is a single engine. It's like a Cirrus aircraft. A Cirrus is a single engine piston propeller,
Right.
but this is a Cirrus. They actually threw a jet engine on the top of it, not the sides like you normally see. It's just one. Atlanta Center calls me and says, "Hey, I have an aircraft. He's emergency. He lost." Well, it says he told me. He says the radar scope, the transponder was saying that he's at 28,000 feet, flight level 280. He says, but he's saying he's closer, really more like 18,000 feet. But he doesn't have his altitude's not right and his airspeed's not working, and so he was going to land in Birmingham. So I took the handoff over, but he was by Anniston, that area, and I'm talking to him. And he was going to come into Birmingham and land. He wasn't unfamiliar. He's never been to our airport. He was not familiar. It was overcast that day, and he was above the clouds. And I was talking to him. He said that he doesn't have any. He wanted to know all of his airspeed changes. He goes, "Let me know all I know is his ground speed." He has to figure out his airspeed because if he has a headwind or a tailwind, that changes your ground speed. All I know is your ground speed. But I told him I'd let him know his changes in his ground speed. And what I would do is I would vector him for the ILS approach. That way he could use the glide slope as his altitude. And ILS, I don't know if you know what it is. You have needles that line you up left or right of the runway. And this is the glide slope. And it lets you know if you're too high, you want to have them centered.
Right.
So the glide slope lets you know if you're on the right path, descent path. I was like, you can use that to get in. Well, I had a American Airlines jet departing. So I was like, radar contact, climb maintain 10,000. And I said, well, the Vision jet told me, I'm following myself on my iPad and it says I'm at 28,000 feet, but I'm really closer to 18,000 feet. I'm just above the tops of the clouds. And so when he said that, when I had my departure, I said, let me know when you break out of the tops of the clouds. He broke out and he goes, we just broke out at 4,000 feet.
Oh,
So
wow.
I thought he was at 18,000 feet, but he was at 4,000 feet.
Wow.
And then he's like, what's the MVA in this area? I said, it's 4,000 feet. So don't go any lower. Just stay above the clouds. And so I vectored him in, and I had to tell him his airspeed, and I relayed all this information to the tower controller. And the tower controller, on approach, they were on the ILS, on the localizer, coming inbound. And I was listening too, and I hear your airspeed 210, 190, 170. Because they're slowing down there because they're getting ready to land. They're about a mile final, and it's like 150, 190, 230. I mean, it was like it shot up fast, and all of a sudden, she said, "And your gear's not down." She was looking, his gear wasn't down. So, anyways, he went around and he did some checks and works, and he ended up finally landing. What ended up happening was airplanes have a pitot tube, which is like a little thing that sticks down below the wing or somewhere on the aircraft. It's got holes in it, and that's what tells you your airspeed. Tells you it uses the altimeter, the air pressure to tell you your altitude and all that kind of stuff. Something in the engine overheated and melted the line that runs from the pitot tube to the instruments. So he didn't have any of that.
Yikes.
That happened a few years ago.
All right, scenario. Me and you, Rachel, the kids, Wendy, Dalen, we're all on a plane together. Both pilots have heart attacks and can't fly. Can you get us down?
I had that question. I'm glad you asked it. Not exactly the same question, but close.
I took some flying lessons, but I never got my ratings. But I've also flown Flight Simulator enough to where I say yes.
All right,
Love
that's
it.
all I want.
Well, you know the language, man. I mean, that's one
my guy
big,
right
huge
there.
thing.
Yeah.
One big, huge thing is you know the language when you're talking to someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's,
Well, you'll
that's
know
probably,
what you you'll know where you should be, where you shouldn't be,
Yeah.
what speed you should have, what speed you shouldn't be going.
Yeah. When
But
they
out
I
of
mean,
all
say,
four of us, you the man. You know.
now it also depends on the aircraft too.
Oh yeah.
I flew Piper Cherokees and the Diamonds DA-40s, which are single engine pistons, Cessnas, But I never got my ratings or anything. I was in college. I went back to college, in Middle Tennessee State. My parents were like, "We're not paying for this." I was living off of student loans and Blockbuster Video. I was working at Blockbuster Video and working at the food court. And so,
Love it. Moving on up.
oh,
Hey, are there any? I realize it is a serious, if not somber, job. But are there any like? Is there any like inside air traffic controller humor, practical jokes, things you don't say, like you don't say bomb on a plane, right? But like what, like where's the line there? I mean, is there any light fun to be had there?
I know there is. I can't think of any, but as soon as this thing ends, I'm going to think of them all.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you always have. It's like, okay, yeah. Wait, see Jeff over there? I'm gonna go unplug his monitor and see.
Yeah,
We're
like
Might be crossing the line.
gonna put a
like the
booger on
guy,
our screen.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah, that's
or
my
like the guy
coworker
on,
word.
airplane, when he unplugs the landing lights on the
Yeah,
landing strip, and you
Right.
know, just
yeah,
kidding, plugs them back in, something like that.
yeah.
Just kidding. I'll
I
turn
can
back on.
see Woodard. He's like, I'm gonna send break a computer virus. This is gonna be awesome.
Mhm. I'm gonna send Tree down there to streak down the runway and see if you can.
Yeah. Keep
Tree
trees
is
alive.
our
Okay.
six.
Yeah.
Tree is our
You
6'8",
probably
320-pound friend.
nice.
That's
That's
why it's
why
called.
it's called tree.
He would look good running down Birmingham International Shuttlesworth Airport situation, hanging out of the top of a sunroof of a 1988 Cadillac sedan DeVille, proclaiming his love for whoever just left on the airplane. I mean, that sounds like that kind
Yeah, that's Tree.
of guy.
Hey, I said earlier the traditional ways of being hired is military or the college CTI program.
Right.
Once a year, they do a off the street hiring, and that's coming up. You have to get hired in air traffic. You got to be 30 or younger, and the reason is because you're forced to retire at 56. You can get your 25 years in to retire, but it's also harder to learn once you're older too. So,
Yeah.
but if you're 30 or younger, anybody that watches this, in April the 19th through the 22nd, they're having a hiring for people. They call it off the street. You have to be, well, you have to have at least 3 years of work or 4 years of full-time college or a combination of the two to equal that.
I love
Is
that
there?
is a great plug. I think that's really cool. It reminds me when Mike Leach tried out kickers, place kickers, like
Yeah,
when he was at
That's
Texas Tech.
beautiful.
He's like pulling people
yeah,
out of fans. Not that it's
But
like
let's,
that, but that's
yeah.
cool. So you get like
yeah.
referred walk on here.
You have a website they can go to get the information. Do you know anything?
Well, they could go to the FAA.gov website, but to apply, the FAA.gov website will have the information where to go. But USAjobs.gov is where you apply for any government job. And that's where you would apply for this job as well. To do that, you would need to create your profile. So it would be better to do that before April the 19th. So create your profile. You can upload a resume, all your information they're going to say, need. And then on that
Yeah,
date, all you got to do is go in there and just apply for the job, and it's quick.
Gotcha.
dude.
So,
And we know you guys need people.
a lot. We need them a lot. We're very short staffed.
I hate that I'm 51.
How short staffed are we?
That'd be fun,
This
right?
year I chose a four 10-hour shift line, Monday through Thursday. I'm supposed to be off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I've only had one full weekend off this year. Just this weekend, I worked Friday overtime, Saturday overtime. Today's my only day off. I go back tomorrow. That's how short
Wow.
staffed.
Mm.
And that's concerning, man. I mean, that's concerning for a lot of reasons. But number one, you're not as sharp as you are on that sixth day. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
hey,
Might be the fourth day.
yeah, that's definitely
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, the burnout's real.
Yep, I'm already getting burnt out.
I hear you.
Well, I think maybe because we're at our hour, so, but that's been great. But I need to know, I need them to know the story of how you almost died by a dog.
Oh yeah. Gosh, we forgot that segue.
What kind of dog?
Black and tan coonhound.
Black and tan, cool now.
Coonhound shepherd mix.
Oh, y'all got to hear
There you go.
this.
Yeah.
All right.
Shepherds.
About 80 pounds. He
Very
was, at the time, he was 3 years old. So it was 2 years ago. It was January 1st, New Year's Day, 2022. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon. My wife was like, "Hey, it's about to start raining. You need to go take the dogs out." And so the last thing I remember is putting the leash on the dogs, or the one dog. The other dog, I have to. The other dog, just let him out. He's smaller and he doesn't go far. But the
Right.
coonhound will just run straight across the road and jump straight into the lake and swim. He won't come back for hours. So I put a leash on him. That's the last thing I remember. Well, it was it was New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. So my kid was outside in the driveway and he lit a firework.
Oh.
That's just from like what he said and putting pieces together. He lit a firework. The dog took off after him after the firework. It was a retractable leash, so it was zipping out.
Mm.
And so I tried to lock it down, but I think I was jumping up over this like ditch onto the driveway or something, just where it was.
Sure.
And when I locked down and I was in the air, I just went to the right and just on the concrete, bam, just knocked me out and I was laying down. And my son, who was 7 at the time, ran inside and goes, "Mama, I think I killed Daddy."
Oh.
And then
Come
of
on.
course she's sitting there like this. She goes, "Oh, okay."
Oh
My daughter's like, "I want to go see," and so she goes out there.
No, Mom, I'm serious.
Yeah, then she comes back and goes, "Mama, I think he's dead."
yeah. Yikes.
And so she comes out there and she goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" Then she saw like blood on my knees and was like, "Oh, something is wrong." And then all of a sudden the bottom fell out. It just started raining, and she thinks that woke me up. And so she helped me get inside, and I sat on the kitchen table, and I sat there saying the same question, like, "What happened?" I don't remember this.
Right.
What happened? What happened? And so, she called my parents. My parents were like, "You need to call the, paramedics or somebody."
Yeah, yeah.
So she does, calls the paramedics, and he shows up. My parents actually drove there too, and my first memory when everything comes back, just like nothing ever happened. I see the paramedic stand there, and I've never met the guy before, but I'm looking at him like, "What's he doing in the house? What's he doing?" And I see his name tag said Abbott, Abbett, and I'm like, Abbott, and I went, "Are you Dana's boyfriend?" And he looks down at me. He's like, "What?" I said, "Are you Dana's boyfriend?" And it was actually a guy that I'd never met, but he was dating a girl that I work with. And he said it hit him like, "Eric?" And then my parents laughing, and I'm like, "Yeah, why are you here? What's going on?" So
Crazy.
and my dad says, "Do you remember the Alabama game yesterday?" And I was like, "Alabama game? Who'd they play?" He said, "Cincinnati." And I was, "Cincinnati?" So I was thinking basketball. They played them in football on New Year's Eve. I was like, "What sport?" He said, "Football." I'm like, "Nah." He goes, "You watched the whole game." That's when I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And then so he was like, "Well, if you sign this saying you'll take him to the emergency room, we won't take him by ambulance." And so my wife did, and the whole way to there, I felt completely fine. But I was like, "Why don't I remember that?" And so I looked up the Alabama game, and every play I saw, I remembered it. And I actually remembered how the play ended, but I couldn't remember like how the game ended. But the more I watched, the more it came back to me. It's like, this is so weird. But because of that, I lost my FA medical for 6 months. Like they wouldn't let me work traffic for 6 months.
Wow.
Oh, concussion, whatever.
I
Yeah.
had to go to a neurologist. Neurologist said I just had a moderate concussion. The flight surgeon office, who oversees everyone in Atlanta, said I had a traumatic brain injury. My neurologist was like, "It is not a traumatic brain injury. You had a concussion."
Right.
Like, whatever. I mean, I don't know the difference.
Yeah.
I guess they do, but they're going to err. The flight surgeon's always going to err on the most cautious side because they're going to not take any chances.
Right.
So I
And
had to
that's
go
good
through,
too. That's
take a
good.
bunch of, go to the doctor, have CT scans done, make sure everything was good. After 6 months, I'll
Legit
be able to
concussion
work
protocol.
track.
Yeah. So that's a great story. Would you tell it again?
Yeah,
I'm just
it was
kidding.
New Year's Day.
So, I mean, that's just a story that you have to hear. I mean, if you're going to talk to this guy, that's just one of the
Sure.
stories.
Yeah.
We love that story. That's
That's
one
a
of our
good story, dude.
favorites.
Yeah,
Well,
And,
hey,
and
it's
you've got
been
a
great,
built-in
man.
excuse forever now. A built-in excuse. Especially
Yeah.
as you age, your wife will be like, "Hey, did you do X, Y, Z?" Like, what are you talking about?
that's right.
Don't you know I have a traumatic brain injury? Leave me alone.
Yep.
Hey, it's been great, man. Also, dude, man, if that happens first of all, we'd love to invite you back, down the road. But man, if you get any type of crazy lights or any type of crazy stuff out there that they won't let you record it, and then we'll put it online, and we'll go viral, and then you don't have to do it.
Definitely.
Nobody will have to do anything anymore. So
Yeah.
He sends me some good videos sometimes, so it's
we
good.
don't want to see those. We can't put those out.
Yeah. These are all innocent.
Until proven guilty, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, listen, man, it's fun, great, man. Love to meet you in person one day.
Yeah.
Definitely, man. Keep up with us because I'd love to hear some more about all that. I'd love that stuff, man. I think it's great.
Okay. Definitely.
You guys have a good night, and we'll see each other next week.
Thank you,
All right.
Break.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Brett.
You
Thanks.
bet. See ya.
Bye.
Take care.
See you guys.
Roll Tide!
I'm cutting that.
You would.
Don't be such a puss.
Hang on. We can let you chat, buddy.